sometimes a quiet comment is louder than a gunshot. In the carefully managed world of professional sports, where every interview is media-trained and every quote is sanitized, an honest phrase can feel like a sonic boom. And a few days ago, Sophie Cunningham, a player known more for her on-court grit than her off-court soundbites, lit a match. In a moment of unguarded reflection, she gave a simple, almost cliché, assessment of her team's locker room. "Everyone kind of has their own islands," she said. It was a 5-second clip that could have easily been dismissed as generic sports talk, a harmless observation about a team still gelling. But for anyone who has been paying attention to the strange, tense, and often confusing season of the Indiana Fever, it wasn't harmless. It was a flare in the dark. It was the confirmation of a suspicion that has been growing in the minds of millions of fans, a quiet whisper that just became a deafening roar. This isn't about rookie growing pains. This isn't about building chemistry. This is about a schism, a fundamental fracture within a team that is cracking under the weight of a spotlight it never asked for. Sophie Cunningham didn't just share an opinion. She unknowingly pulled back the curtain on one of the most compelling and dysfunctional dramas in sports today. A quiet rebellion is underway in the Fever locker room, a subtle and calculated campaign of resistance against their own superstar, and Cunningham's words just gave it a name. To understand what's happening, you have to understand that this was never just about basketball. When Caitlin Clark was drafted, she wasn't just a number 1 pick, she was a paradigm shift. She arrived in the WNBA as a cultural and economic phenomenon, a player whose gravity was so immense it threatened to pull the entire league out of its orbit and into a new solar system. The private jets, the million-dollar endorsements, the sold-out arenas, the national television coverage. This wasn't the league her new teammates had come up in. They had clawed their way through years of commercial flights, overlooked games, and fighting for a fraction of the attention now being showered on a 22-year-old. And the unspoken rule in professional sports is that you earn your place. You pay your dues. You defer to the veterans who bled for the franchise when no one was watching. But Clark's arrival obliterated that hierarchy. She didn't join the system. Her presence fundamentally broke it. And while the front office, the league, and the marketing departments celebrated a golden goose, a tension began to fester inside the locker room. It wasn't born of malice, not initially. It was born of whiplash. It was born of a deep-seated sense of professional vertigo. Players like Kelsey Mitchell and Alyssa Smith, who had long been the focal points of the team, were suddenly being treated like supporting actors in a blockbuster movie they didn't even audition for. The resistance, therefore, isn't something you'll see in a shouting match or a post-game blow-up. It's far more insidious than that. It's a campaign of 1,000 tiny cuts. It's the art of the subtle freeze-out, a strategy of invisible sabotage that's impossible to prove but impossible to ignore once you see it. It's in the passes that are a half-second too late, arriving just as the window of opportunity closes. It's in the defensive rotations that are a step too slow, leaving Clark to defend a 2-on-1 situation she never should have been in. It's in the body language during timeouts, tight, closed-off circles of veterans, with Clark on the periphery, looking more like an intern than the franchise centerpiece. It's the difference between a team playing with a superstar and a team simply tolerating one. What fans have been sensing is real. That awkward, disjointed feeling you get while watching the Fever offense isn't just bad basketball. It's the visual representation of a philosophical war. On one side, you have a generational offensive talent who sees the game in 4 dimensions, a player whose instinct is to make the right basketball play, to move the ball, to create for others. On the other, you have a core of players clinging to an older, slower, more isolation-heavy style of play, a style that kept them in control, even if it didn't lead to wins. Clark wants to play chess at light speed. Some of her teammates seem determined to keep playing checkers. This isn't just a theory. The evidence has been mounting all season, captured in viral clips and fan-made compilations that show a deeply troubling pattern. There are dozens of instances of Clark, wide open after a brilliant off-ball cut, being blatantly ignored by a teammate who chooses instead to drive into a wall of defenders. These aren't just misreads, they appear to be conscious decisions. A player of Clark's caliber doesn't get accidentally overlooked this often. It's a passive-aggressive assertion of control. It's a nonverbal way of saying, "The offense still runs through me." Look at the assist numbers. Clark is among the league leaders, but that statistic hides a more telling story: the number of potential assists she creates that are fumbled, hesitated on, or simply not taken. She delivers perfect pocket passes to rolling bigs who seem surprised the ball is coming, or hits shooters on the wing who pause for a fatal moment, allowing the defense to recover. For a while, this was dismissed as a lack of chemistry. But as the season wears on, it's starting to look less like unfamiliarity and more like intentional friction. The team's offense is visibly more fluid and effective when the ball is in Clark's hands and she's allowed to orchestrate. Yet, there are long stretches of games where she is relegated to the role of a bystander, parked in the corner as other players dominate the ball. It's a baffling strategy that has cost them games and has left analysts speechless. But it's not baffling if you stop seeing it as a basketball problem and start seeing it for what Cunningham's comment revealed it to be: a human one. It's about power, identity, and the primal fear of becoming irrelevant. The anatomy of this freeze-out is complex because its most damaging elements are found in the negative space, in the things that don't happen. It's easy to spot a bad pass. It's much harder to quantify a screen that was set half-heartedly, giving the defender an easy path to overwhelm Clark. It's hard to put on a stat sheet the moments when a teammate is late on a defensive rotation, forcing Clark to cover an impossible amount of ground and then making it look like she was the one who made the mistake. This is where the resistance is so brilliant in its subtlety. These are basketball plays that happen dozens of times in a game. They offer plausible deniability. A player can always say they were a step slow, that they didn't see the play develop. But when the pattern consistently repeats and disproportionately affects one player, deniability begins to look like a tactic. Watch the games with this in mind, and it becomes painfully obvious. Notice how often Clark has to fight through screens without any help from her teammates. Notice the lack of communication on defense, where players will switch assignments and leave her isolated against a forward in the post. These aren't just mistakes. This is the weaponization of incompetence. It is a way to diminish a player's effectiveness without ever leaving a fingerprint, a method of containing her impact by creating constant, low-level chaos around her. This on-court friction is a direct reflection of the off-court culture that Cunningham described. The islands she spoke of are not just social cliques, they are strategic alliances. Insiders have described practices where the team naturally segregates, with the veteran core running drills on one side of the court while Clark and the younger players work on the other. Look at the bench during games. When a veteran scores, the reaction is energetic and supportive. When Clark makes a spectacular assist or a crucial three-pointer, the response is often visibly muted, a polite clap, a slight nod. The stark difference in energy is impossible to unsee. It's a silent but powerful signal of who is considered part of the in-group and who is not. This social stratification extends beyond the arena. The team's social media presence is a fascinating case study in itself. Players who actively engage with each other's posts will often remain silent on posts celebrating Clark's historic achievements. It may seem petty, but in the modern era where an athlete's brand is currency, these digital interactions are a form of political endorsement. A like or a repost is a signal of unity, and the silence is a signal of division. What Cunningham's comment did was give everyone permission to finally talk about the elephant in the room. This isn't a team. It's a collection of independent contractors sharing a jersey, with competing agendas that are actively undermining the collective goal. To be clear, this isn't simply a case of veteran jealousy, though that is certainly a component. This is about professional survival. For years, the veterans on this team operated in relative obscurity. Their brand, their identity, and their leverage in contract negotiations were all tied to being the primary options on the Indiana Fever. Kelsey Mitchell was the scorer. Nalissa Smith was the athletic forward. They had carved out niches in a league that has very little room for error. Then, overnight, the entire ecosystem changed. Caitlin Clark didn't just take shots away from them, she took their identity. She became the face of the franchise, the engine of the offense, and the subject of 99% of all media inquiries before she had even played a single professional game. That kind of seismic shift creates a deep sense of instability. The fear is not just that your role will be diminished, but that you will be rendered obsolete. So the resistance, in their eyes, isn't sabotage, it's a fight for relevance. It's an attempt to prove that the team is still theirs, that they are more than just accessories to the Caitlin Clark show. By controlling the flow of the ball, by subtly undermining her on the court, they are attempting to reassert their value and hold on to the power structure that has defined their careers. It is a deeply human, if deeply misguided, response to a perceived existential threat. The tragedy in all of this is that Clark's style of play is inherently unselfish. Her basketball genius lies in her ability to elevate everyone around her. Her gravity pulls defenders away from the basket, creating open lanes for cutters. Her court vision finds open shooters before they even realize they are open. A team built around her strengths would, ironically, make every other player on the roster look better. Their stats would improve. Their efficiency would skyrocket. And most importantly, the team would win, which is the ultimate currency in professional sports. A winning team gets more national television games, more endorsement opportunities, and more lucrative contracts for everyone involved. But the players seem to be caught in a classic prisoner's dilemma, so focused on protecting their individual slice of the pie that they are actively preventing the pie from getting any bigger. They are choosing short-term control over long-term success. And so, game after game, the pattern continues. A brilliant pass that goes unrewarded. A wide-open shot that is ignored. A disjointed offense that looks less like a professional system and more like a reluctant pickup game. The front office and the coaching staff continue to preach patience, speaking of growth and chemistry. But what Sophie Cunningham's comment made clear is that this isn't a problem that can be solved with more practice time. It's a crisis of identity, a power struggle that is tearing the Indiana Fever apart from the inside out, one subtle snub at a time. This leads to the most uncomfortable question in the entire saga. Where is the leadership? A locker room civil war of this magnitude doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when a power void allows it to fester. The coaching staff, led by Christy Sides, appears to be either unwilling or unable to extinguish the fires that are consuming her team. In professional sports, the head coach is supposed to be the ultimate authority, the one who sets the culture, defines the hierarchy, and ensures that all players are aligned with a single mission: winning. But on the Indiana Fever, the on-court product suggests that the inmates are running the asylum. The persistent freelance offense, the lack of strategic adjustments to get Clark the ball in her spots, and the failure to hold players accountable for consistently ignoring the team's most potent offensive weapon, all point to a catastrophic failure of leadership. Every time a player looks off a wide-open Clark to take a contested long two, and there is no immediate consequence, it sends a clear message to the rest of the team: this behavior is acceptable. The coach's public statements have been a steady stream of cliches about getting better every day and learning to play together. But these platitudes ring hollow when they are directly contradicted by the visual evidence of a team that is not playing together at all. This isn't a team on a journey of discovery, it's a team locked in a stalemate, and the coaching staff seems to have brought no solutions to the negotiation table. The culpability extends beyond the coaching staff and straight to the front office. The organization celebrated winning the Caitlin Clark lottery as if they had just solved world hunger. They marketed her relentlessly, selling out season tickets and plastering her face on every available surface. They understood her value as a commercial asset, but they have shown a staggering naivete about their responsibility to protect that asset on the basketball court. They drafted a generational point guard whose specialty is playing a fast-paced, modern, 5-out offense, and they surrounded her with players whose skills and instincts are often better suited to a bygone era of basketball. They failed to acquire the necessary veteran leadership, not just older players, but players who have experience integrating with superstars and understand how to adapt their game for the greater good. Instead, they threw the most hyped prospect in a generation into a pre-existing, fragile ecosystem without providing the necessary support structure. The result is what we see today: A franchise player who is being systematically undermined by the very teammates the organization is paying to support her. The front office saw the dollar signs, but they seemingly forgot that you can't cash the checks if the product on the floor is broken. They wanted the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, but they seem to have put very little thought into how to build an actual Caitlin Clark basketball team. This crisis is ultimately a clash between two fundamentally different philosophies, not just of basketball, but of business. The veteran players represent the old model of professional sports, a world where seniority is paramount, where respect is earned through years of thankless grinding, and where the team hierarchy is rigid. In this world, a rookie, no matter how talented, is expected to wait their turn. But Caitlin Clark represents the new model. She is a 21st century athlete, a global brand whose power and influence are not solely derived from the team she plays for. Her audience is bigger than the team's. Her endorsement portfolio is bigger than the team's. In the modern sports landscape, a player like Clark is not just an employee, she is a partner in the business enterprise. The old rules of deference simply do not apply. The Indiana Fever's leadership, both on the bench and in the executive suites, seems utterly incapable of navigating this new reality. They are trying to impose an old-world structure on a new-world talent, and the resulting friction is shaking the franchise to its foundations. They are asking a player who can bend the gravity of the league to first learn how to fit into a system that is already obsolete. It is a failure of vision, a failure of adaptation, and a failure that is wasting precious time in the career of a truly special player. And through it all, Caitlin Clark has been a consummate professional. She has deflected questions about internal strife, praised her teammates in public, and taken responsibility for her own mistakes. She has done everything in her power to be a good teammate, to lead by example, and to win. But you can see the frustration simmering beneath the surface. You can see it in the slump of her shoulders after another ignored cut to the basket. You can see it in the exasperated look to the sky after a teammate fumbles a perfect pass. You can see it in the moments on the bench where she sits alone, staring into the distance, looking like a player who feels profoundly isolated. She is doing her job, but she cannot do it alone. Basketball is a team sport, and right now, she is on an island, just as Sophie Cunningham said. The question is no longer whether the island exists. The question is how long Clark is willing to stay on it. She is locked into a rookie contract, but the clock is ticking. The entire league, and the entire sports world, is watching this dysfunctional experiment in Indiana. They are watching to see if the organization can get its act together, if the players can put their egos aside, and if the coaching staff can finally build a real team around their superstar. Because if they can't, they risk committing one of the greatest acts of managerial malpractice in sports history, taking a once-in-a-generation talent and crushing her under the weight of their own mediocrity. The Indiana Fever are now at a crossroads, and the path they choose will define not only their season but the future of their franchise for the next decade. On one path lies the potential for greatness. It's a future where the team embraces the generational talent they were gifted, where veterans adapt their roles and find new ways to thrive alongside a superstar, and where the coaching staff builds a modern, dynamic system designed to win championships. In this future, the current struggles are remembered as nothing more than the painful but necessary growing pains of a dynasty in its infancy. But the other path is far darker. It's a path where ego wins out over logic, where the quiet resistance continues, and where the team remains fractured and dysfunctional. On this path, they will continue to underperform, wasting game after game of Clark's rookie contract. Fan frustration will boil over into genuine anger, ticket sales will eventually stagnate, and the national spotlight will move on, leaving the Fever exactly where they were before Clark arrived, in the shadows. The choice is theirs, but the window to make it is closing with every disjointed possession. The current situation is simply not sustainable. You cannot build a winning culture on a foundation of resentment. You cannot ask a superstar to lead a team that is actively resisting being led. What is often forgotten in these high-stakes analyses is the human toll on Caitlin Clark herself. She arrived in this league with the weight of the world on her shoulders, expected to single-handedly elevate viewership, ticket sales, and the economic future of the WNBA. She has handled that unprecedented pressure with a grace and maturity far beyond her years. But she is still a 22-year-old rookie, trying to navigate the toughest basketball league in the world. On top of the physical and mental challenges of the game itself, she is also being forced to navigate a complex and hostile political landscape within her own locker room. There is a profound loneliness in being the designated savior, and that loneliness is magnified when the people who are supposed to be your allies treat you like an outsider. How long can any player, no matter how talented, endure that kind of environment? How long can you be the one to make the right play, only to be met with hesitation or silence? How long can you carry the burden of being both the engine of the team and the target of its internal frustrations? There will come a breaking point. Her professionalism may be masking it now, but the corrosive effect of this internal strife is undoubtedly taking a toll. This has now become a problem that transcends the walls of the Indiana Fever's arena. The WNBA itself has a vested interest in the success of this experiment. The Caitlin Clark effect is real, and it has been a transformative force for the league. She is the rising tide lifting all boats. But if the flagship team for this new era is seen as a dysfunctional, underachieving mess, it damages the credibility of the entire product. It sends a terrible message to future stars and to the millions of new fans who are tuning in for the first time. The league needs Clark to be in a position where she can succeed, where her incredible talents are showcased, not suppressed. The ongoing drama in Indiana is no longer just a local sports story. It is a threat to the WNBA's single greatest marketing and growth opportunity in its history. The pressure from the league office on the Fever's ownership and management to fix this situation must be immense, because a failing star in a key market is a crisis for everyone. Ultimately, something has to break. The current equilibrium of quiet tension and on-court mediocrity cannot hold. Either the veteran players will have a moment of clarity and realize that their best chance at success and continued relevance is to embrace Clark's vision, or the front office will be forced to make drastic changes. This could mean trading key players who are unwilling to adapt, restructuring the coaching staff, or bringing in new leadership with a clear mandate to build everything around their franchise player. The resistance may feel like it's preserving the old guard's control, but all it's really doing is accelerating the timeline for their own extinction. In the business of professional sports, talent always wins. And right now, the most talented player is being held back. Sophie Cunningham said everyone has their own islands, and she was right. But what the Indiana Fever organization needs to understand is that those islands are drifting further and further apart in a sea of their own making. And if they don't start building bridges immediately, they will soon find themselves completely stranded, watching as their generational superstar sails away towards a brighter horizon, leaving them with nothing but the bitter taste of regret and the lingering question of what might have been.